From his early days as a promising athlete to his deep involvement in Australia's outlaw motorcycle gang culture, Shane Bowden's story is one of dramatic turns and dangerous alliances. His murder in October 2020 sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld and triggered one of Queensland's most extensive police investigations. Years later, the case remains embroiled in legal battles, with multiple arrests and a delayed trial. This video explores Shane's journey from a troubled youth to his violent end and the ongoing quest for justice. Born in 1972 to biological parents who were just 12 years old at the time of his birth, Shane Bowden's story began with hardship. Unable to care for him, his biological parents placed him up for adoption, and he was taken in by a family with much older children. Raised in a household that wasn't his own, Bowden struggled to find his footing, and his early years were defined by academic struggles. Though he managed to reach a grade 4 level of literacy, school never became a place of achievement or solace. But where formal education failed him, sport became Shane's escape. He was given the opportunity to attend the Australian Institute of Sport, where his natural athleticism found expression in cycling. Driven by a desire to make his adoptive parents proud, Bowden poured himself into training, aiming to represent Australia at the 1996 Olympics. His ambition and dedication to the sport were undeniable, but just as he was poised to reach the pinnacle of his athletic career, disaster struck. A serious injury abruptly ended his cycling aspirations, and Shane, ever determined, turned to bodybuilding. It was in the world of gyms and weights that Shane would find his next chapter, but it wasn't the kind of world that would foster healthy growth. His immersion in the fitness culture would soon intertwine with a darker reality. Through his frequenting of gyms, Shane met members of outlaw motorcycle clubs, men whose lives were far from the disciplined world of sport. This connection would prove to be the turning point that led Shane into the violent, chaotic world of the Finks motorcycle club. The Finks are one of Australia's most notorious outlaw motorcycle clubs, known for their violent methods and criminal enterprises. Their activities range from drug trafficking and extortion to violent enforcement and retribution. It wasn't long before Shane, drawn to their camaraderie and toughness, became a member of the Finks. The club's ruthless reputation and close-knit loyalty to its members appealed to him, but as his involvement deepened, so did his criminal activities. Shane's criminal life began to unravel in the late 1990s. In 1996, he was caught with stolen property and fined, a small taste of the trouble to come. A year later, he was convicted of assaulting a woman, and his troubles only grew. By 1997, his actions escalated. He was caught trafficking cocaine, with more than 23 grams of the drug in his possession. As his criminal record began to pile up, Shane's fate seemed sealed. He was convicted on 21 charges, including several committed while he was already out on bail, and sentenced to 8 years in prison. His violent tendencies and connection to the Finks OMCG made him a force to be reckoned with, and his time behind bars only solidified his place in the underworld. During his time in the Finks, Shane became a key member of the club's infamous Terror Team. This elite group of enforcers was feared for their strength and brutal methods. The Terror Team's primary function was to collect Finks fines, debts owed to the club, often involving drugs, loans, or extortion payments. Their work was violent and intimidating, with a reputation for using whatever means necessary to enforce the club's will. Just quickly, if you're enjoying this video so far and want more stories from the Australian underworld, please consider subscribing and liking this video. It really helps me out and helps the channel grow. One of the most notorious moments in Shane's criminal career came in 2006, during the infamous ballroom blitz. The event, which took place at the Royal Pines Resort on the Gold Coast, was a violent confrontation between the Finks and the Hells Angels. The two clubs had long been bitter rivals, and the violence erupted at a kickboxing tournament where a former Finks member, Christopher Wayne Hudson, was targeted. Hudson had defected to the Hells Angels, a betrayal considered unforgivable in outlaw motorcycle gang culture. Shane, along with several other Finks members, was part of the crew that set out to punish Hudson for his defection. The altercation quickly escalated, and Shane, in the heat of the moment, shot Hudson twice, once in the face and once in the back. He handed himself into the police a month later and was charged with attempted murder. He was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison and was labelled a serious violent offender. A year later, Hudson would be involved in the Melbourne CBD shooting, for which he was eventually handed a life sentence. Shane's time behind bars did little to change his trajectory, as he remained closely aligned with bikie culture. Upon his release, he found himself at a crossroads, but instead of stepping away from this violent world, he doubled down on his criminal associations. On September 27, 2013, an incident known as the Broadbeach Brawl marked a pivotal moment in the history of organised crime in Queensland. Around 8:30 PM, outside a restaurant in Broadbeach, a violent clash between 50 members of the Bandidos motorcycle club and other outlaw motorcycle gang members erupted. It was a shocking display of lawlessness, with the violence so severe that police were forced to intervene. They used stun guns to disperse the crowd. However, a second brawl broke out shortly afterward, leading to further arrests and injuries. A total of 18 people were charged with various offences, including assault, public nuisance, obstructing and assaulting police. Additionally, 3 motorcycle gang members were hospitalised, although they weren't severely injured, and 4 male police officers sustained minor injuries but didn't require medical treatment. CCTV footage capturing the chaos went viral, further amplifying the public outcry. The Broadbeach Brawl was seen as a tipping point in the rising concern about the presence and influence of outlaw motorcycle gangs in Queensland. In response, the Queensland government moved quickly to address the issue with legislative action by introducing the Vicious Lawless Association Disestablishment Act 2013. The act aimed to target and dismantle outlaw motorcycle gangs by criminalising membership in such groups, effectively making it illegal to be a member of a gang involved in criminal activities. The legislation also gave police enhanced powers to disrupt gang operations, such as the ability to seize assets and restrict the movements of known gang members. Furthermore, it introduced mandatory minimum sentences for certain offences committed by individuals with gang affiliations. The impact of this new law was immediate and significant. Many members of outlaw motorcycle gangs, especially those from prominent groups like the Finks, were now at risk of criminal charges simply for being associated with these organisations. Faced with the harsh penalties and the heightened police scrutiny in Queensland, many gang members chose to relocate to other states, most notably Victoria, where the policing of outlaw motorcycle gangs was less aggressive at the time and began to patch over to rival gangs that were less visible on the radar of law enforcement. Shane Bowden was among them. He moved to Melbourne and joined the Mongols motorcycle club, a gang that, at the time, was still building its presence in Australia. For him, the transition from the Finks to the Mongols was a direct response to the shifting landscape caused by the act. It allowed him to remain active in the outlaw motorcycle gang world while minimising the risks associated with staying in a high-profile club like the Finks. The law, meant to dismantle the power of criminal gangs, only served to reshape the Australian underworld, pushing gangs to adapt and reorganise in ways that would continue to fuel their illegal enterprises. Shane's efforts to avoid the law's reach, however, were short-lived. In 2015, he and his then-girlfriend, Janet Asen Unlu Tat Campbell, became involved in a violent home invasion. The couple broke into a Melbourne apartment, armed with a Bowie knife and crowbar, and demanded money from the 2 men and 2 women inside. During the confrontation, Shane assaulted one of the men before a violent struggle ensued. In the chaos, he stabbed both men. This violent act led to their arrest, and in 2015, Shane and Campbell were convicted of the home invasion. He was sentenced to prison, while she received a corrections order for her involvement. Once again, Shane found himself behind bars, reinforcing his reputation as one of the country's most notorious bikies. Shane Bowden's life, marked by violence and criminal activity, also had a personal side. One of the most significant relationships in his life was with Trudy McPhee. They first met in the mid-1990s at the Australian Institute of Sport in Canberra, when Shane was an elite cyclist and McPhee was a talented swimmer. Their initial romance was brief, but their paths would cross again, contacting each other for the first time in years after the infamous ballroom blitz. Despite the ups and downs of Shane's life, he and McPhee maintained an on and off relationship for over 30 years, with McPhee eventually becoming the mother of one of his 2 sons. But it was during his incarceration in Loddon Prison that their bond deepened once again. In the final months of his sentence, Shane wrote a series of heartfelt letters to McPhee, expressing his longing for her and his desire to rebuild their family once he was released. In the letters, he also made it clear that he had fully committed to the Mongols, signalling his loyalty by using the club's motto, "Respect few, fear none," and signing off with the acronym RFFN. Shane even mentioned his plans to remove his Finks tattoos, symbols of a past that he was ready to leave behind as he fully embraced his new club. However, despite his letter's romantic hopes, once released, he betrayed both McPhee and his Mongols brothers by making an unexpected decision. After Shane was discharged from prison in June 2020, he was given a hero's welcome by his club. Senior Mongols, including their president Toby Mitchell, met him upon his release and escorted him back to Melbourne in a white limousine. However, his return to the Mongols was short-lived. Within weeks, tensions arose between him and the club's leadership, including Mitchell, and by late June, he was kicked out of the Mongols. In a shocking turn of events, Shane then rejoined the same club he had abandoned years before. He had removed tattoos and preached about the Mongols during his time in jail, yet by late June 2020, he was back with the Finks, a choice that would soon have serious consequences. On July 1st, 2020, just days after being kicked out of the Mongols and rejoining the Finks, Shane Bowden was shot in the leg in a drive-by attack while talking to 2 men in the driveway of a home on Young Street in Epping, Melbourne. Police later suggested this was an attempted assassination, likely orchestrated by the Mongols to silence Shane and put him in his place after he switched allegiances. This attack made it clear that Melbourne was no longer safe for him. While recovering from his gunshot wounds in a Melbourne hospital, Shane contracted COVID. Once he recovered, he decided to leave Victoria, feeling increasingly unsafe and vulnerable in Melbourne. In September 2020, he flew to Queensland, but his move was immediately shrouded in controversy. He was accused of breaching COVID travel restrictions, as he allegedly lied on his border declaration pass when entering Queensland. The case gained significant media attention, with initial reports suggesting he had flown while infectious. When he later fronted Southport Magistrates Court, he was fined $750 as the magistrate sided with him, citing confusion over the border form. Once in Queensland, Shane did not reunite with Trudy McPhee as promised, but moved in with Crystal Clement, a woman living in Pimpama on the Gold Coast with her 2 young children. There he felt safe, however. Queensland wasn't far enough for those who wanted him dead. On October 12th, 2020, just after midnight, Shane arrived home from the gym and pulled into the garage of Clement's home on Cox Road in a black BMW sedan. As he sat in the driver's seat, 2 hooded gunmen ambushed him, unleashing a hail of bullets. In just 13 seconds, he was shot 21 times, 19 times, with 1 gun and twice with a shotgun. Clement and her 2 children were inside the house, just meters away from the execution. Queensland Police Detective Superintendent Brendan Smith described the attack as a targeted execution, saying Shane had barely pulled into the driveway before the killers struck. On that day, his violent past caught up to him, ending in a cold-blooded execution outside Clement's home. After Shane's murder, an extensive investigation began. Given his recent return to the club and his previous tensions with both the Mongols and the Finks, authorities considered the possibility that the Finks might have been involved in his death. However, Trudy McPhee denied that the Finks were behind it, stating that while Shane had been feeling paranoid and feared he was being followed, she firmly believed it wasn't the Finks who were after him. As the investigation progressed, new rumours surfaced about a feud between Shane and Jai Carter, another senior Finks member. It was rumoured that Carter had accused Shane of becoming involved with his girlfriend, Tenielle Patterson, which escalated tensions between the two. Carter was reportedly upset upon hearing about Shane's relationship with Patterson, which contributed to their ongoing conflict. Carter also claimed that Shane had him kicked out of the Finks. Carter alleged that he had orchestrated his removal from the club, by getting other senior members involved, which led to the assumption that Shane's death could have been related to internal Finks politics. However, some Finks associates dismissed these rumours, saying they were unrelated to the killing. The investigation reached a significant turning point in 2021 with the arrest of 8 men believed to be involved in the murder. On July 11th, police raided multiple properties across Queensland, culminating in the arrests of 7 men linked to the Mongols gang. Among those arrested were David Miatuai, Peter Michael Cummins, Joshua James Small, Junior Torup, Fidel Gunes, Hayden Thomas Forbes, and Junior Jasmine Mau. An 8th man, Ian Ronald Crowden, the president of the Brisbane West chapter of the Mongols, was arrested a few days earlier. They were soon charged with 1 count of murder in relation to the death of Shane. Police suggested that Shane's murder was a Mongol-directed hit, stemming from his defection from the Mongols to the rival Finks gang. As the investigation progressed, it was revealed that the crime was meticulously planned and executed with a high level of sophistication. Detectives uncovered evidence that Shane had been stalked for weeks before his death. CCTV footage from the unit complex where he had been staying revealed 2 men placing a GPS tracking device on his BMW car just weeks before his murder. Authorities claimed that the men had used the tracker to monitor Shane's movements and were also able to link the tracking devices and GPS apps to the accused. These revelations painted a chilling picture of a well-coordinated and calculated crime, highlighting the premeditation behind the killing. In November 2023, Fidel Gunes, one of the originally charged men, was cleared of involvement in Shane's murder. A Brisbane magistrate ruled there was no case to answer, and the charges against him were dismissed. This was a significant setback for prosecutors, however. In March 2024, the case took a dramatic turn when a key witness emerged, claiming that Joshua Small had confessed to the murder while in prison. According to the witness, Small bragged about receiving a $120,000 payment for his role in the hit. Further forensic evidence linked Small and another suspect to a Telstra SIM card used in the GPS tracker. Authorities also traced Small's car near Shane's residence multiple times before the murder, further solidifying the case against him. Despite the mounting evidence, legal proceedings remained complex, with multiple defense lawyers challenging the charges. On February 3rd, 2025, the legal proceedings faced another setback when Michael Gatenby, a prominent criminal defense lawyer, withdrew from representing several of the accused. He also revealed that his clients planned to argue there was no case to answer in their upcoming trial. This was due to issues with evidence and the fact that crucial witness transcripts had not been made available to Gatenby's office by the Crime and Corruption Commission. This revelation signalled that the defence was not planning to concede guilt. Instead, they intended to challenge the prosecution's case, which was largely based on circumstantial evidence, including GPS data and mobile phone tracking. As a result, the Brisbane Magistrates Court rescheduled the committal hearing to October 13th, 2025. The trial, which will be held over a week, will determine whether the accused men will face murder charges in the death of Shane Bowden. A separate hearing scheduled for April 28th, 2025 will determine if all accused have proper legal representation, while another hearing on July 16th will address witness safety concerns and cross-examination procedures. The Shane Bowden murder case remains one of the most high-profile Bikie crime cases in recent years. With the trial now set for October 2025, the case continues to draw public attention. The outcome of the trial will not only determine the fate of the accused, but may also shape future law enforcement strategies against outlaw motorcycle gang activities. For Shane's family, the journey toward justice has been long and filled with uncertainty, but as the evidence mounts, the hope for accountability endures. For now, all eyes will remain on the courtroom as the story of Shane Bowden's tragic end seeks its resolution. This brings us to the end of this case. Let me know what you think of this case down below. As always, if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Till next time, take care.